The Counterpoint checklist is mainly about musical textures. In fact, many of the things in this checklist also fall into the realm of orchestration in the larger sense of the term. Orchestration in this sense doesn't just refer to the instruments you choose, but also to the various kinds of textures you can create with them, different planes of tone, and so on. Before going into more detail, we could talk about the rules of counterpoint for a moment. Most of them are pedagogical. Their purpose is just to avoid common beginner's problems or to focus the exercises on one or two main things. But a properly trained composer will understand that many of these rules are not absolute, they're matters of degree. Let's say a composer wants to compose in a triadic style. Here's some examples of parallel fifths. Let's look at them in detail. Here the parallel fifths in measures 5 and 6 really stick out, since everything except the ending is thirds and sixths. So those two measures sound like a hole in the texture. The unison at the end is also bare, but it's at the cadence, so it makes sense, or it has an effect rather like a diminuendo. But in the middle, those fifths just sound out of place. Let's compare various other situations with parallel fifths. First example is taken from the previous counterpoint. It's extremely salient. What about the next one, in 4 parts? This is a bit better, so it includes the thirds of the chords in the middle parts. But all the voices still move in parallel. There's no real contrapuntal independence here, and the parallelism is still very obvious. Our third example still contains the parallel fifths in the top 2 voices, but now they're definitely less salient. They no longer involve the outer voices, and the bottom voices now move in contrary motion. A few more examples. In the first one here, the parallels are delayed with a suspension. The fact they aren't attacked simultaneously makes the listener even less likely to notice them. The addition of an ornamental resolution in the next example, and of movement in the tenor voice in the final one, makes the parallels virtually unnoticeable. So, should the composer avoid parallel fifths at all costs? No. What matters here is what we hear, specifically whether we hear a hole in the texture. Real issue here is salience, what stands out. Rather than just following the academic rules without thinking, the composer needs to ask whether there's an audible problem. And if even repeated listening doesn't point to one, there is no problem. Approached in this way, and this is how counterpoint should be taught, the real goal here is to sensitize the composer's ear to various situations, like holes in the texture. And that kind of sensitivity can be applied in any harmonic style. Being at ease with counterpoint can also help the composer in many other compositional situations. An important application of contrapuntal thinking concerns orchestral textures. Here's an example. In the first example, the oboes and clarinets have literal doubling. This isn't bad, but compare the second example here. Though the harmony and the main line are the same, the moving parts now have more independence. This is a detail for the listener, but for the player it makes the part more interesting. And an attentive listener might also note that the texture is simply more alive and richer. Doing this consistently over large orchestral work makes the passages where many instruments are playing together sound richer than just heavy doubling of a few basic lines. Another important application of counterpoint is accompaniment textures. Here's an example. The accompaniment here is just formulaic arpeggios. It provides harmonic support for the soloist playing the melody, the figuration is very predictable, and it's not interesting for the pianist to play. What about this? Here I've made small changes to the right hand by adding a few passing notes and neighbor notes to the middle part of the arpeggio line. This makes the overall texture much richer, and it's more fun to play as well. Here's another example of a typical accompaniment in a different harmonic style. Those repeated notes are, again, totally predictable. But if we add just a touch of less predictable detail, listen to the difference. Again, this more motivic approach personalizes the texture. Another important application of counterpoint decomposition is a simple but often ignored principle. Don't always have the main line on top. Sometimes just changing its register or its place in the texture can provide renewed interest for the listener. If, for example, we had our previous accompaniment example with the melody and the violins somewhere early in the piece, we might do this later on. So, the main point of this lesson is counterpoint is not just a matter of writing fugues. In music that isn't mainly contrapuntal, little touches of counterpoint can add a lot of interest. Once the student has become sensitized to these details of texture, they can transform simple formulaic textures into something more personal and create orchestrations that are much richer and more interesting for the players as well.